Right, we're nearly set to start spraying that paint we carefully mixed up in our little cup. Now what do we practice on? Anything. Anything you like. Probably don't practice on your wife's wardrobe collection, your dresses and stuff like this, on your best t-shirt or your mate's motorcycle. Don't practice on these things, but other than that, any kind of medium, any canvas goes. If you want to be a t-shirt artist, airbrush artist, get some t-shirts, get some clothes, you know, some bed sheets, practice on that. If you want to be a automotive artist, you need to get some metal panels. If you want to be some other kind of canvas artist, get some canvas or anything that goes. Really, the more medium you're going to practice on, the better you're going to be, the better you're going to get. Obviously different rules apply and different paint consistency applies to different medium you're practicing on and you want to paint on, but the more stuff you're gonna put your hands on, only better for you. When I say that everything goes, I mean literally, virtually everything goes. In fact, I show you my very first practice piece. I need to take you off the tripod. When I first got my airbrush, there was a piece of wood in the garage, which later on I converted into a kind of that's piece of wood I'm talking about. I converted that. I put some metal ratings. I welded some struts around it. It's a homemade kind of motorcycle ramp I use to load my bikes and stuff. It's a very handy piece of equipment to have on a budget. But that piece of wood, believe it or not, it was a perfect size because it's nearly as tall as me. From the very bottom up to here, so I could just lay it against the wall like this, and I came with my airbrush and I was practicing. As you can see, there are still patterns and stuff over here from my very first airbrush. And again, I was using blue. There was a completely different airbrush I'm using right now, completely different paint, and I had no idea what I'm doing. But as you can see, I'm doing some dagger strokes over here, practicing dagger strokes, some fading effects, very fine lines, and there's a little burger painted over here, and dots and spots, and that is a very good exercise. I'll tell you what it's all about as well. As you can see, I've been doing it over and over again, and lines. But that's my very first practice piece, you know. And this, I turned it around and it was upside down, but there you go. Keep going this way over here. So that was my very practice piece, just piece of wood. So you can use anything you want, really. On the other side is, this part is black, but over there, because I was spraying some stuff on it, I guess, but over there are some more practice pieces. As you can see, anything goes. So you can practice on aluminium panels, on metal panels, you can practice on wood. Wood is very forgiving because it's soaking up if you have too much paint, or anything really goes, you know. So find yourself something to practice on. Paper is good as well. I recommend using paper. It's very forgiving as well for the very first time you hold in your airbrush. Okay, so I've got my piece of wood ready over here. I put it against the wall just so I can attach my little piece of paper over here. It's just a regular small piece of paper. You can get yourself a bigger canvas or anything you really fancy. Doing some airbrushing on paper is very good to start with, I think. So I'm going to stick it right over here. I'm going to show you a couple of very quick exercises just to develop your muscle memory for your trigger. You know, press down and pull back for paint. I'm going to try to zoom you in on this thing, and hopefully you can pick something up from this little exercise. Right, guys, so hope you can hear me okay. I know you can see this little small canvas over here, and hope you can see my trigger action. So we've discussed this before. Down for air. And the further you pull back, the more paint is going to come out. So if I want to airbrush something like a little spot in this point over here, I press down for air and I hold it, and I move my trigger just slightly backwards until some paint comes out. Let's have a look. Down for air. And as a spot over here. If I pull back all the way, a lot more paint is going to come out. Let's have a look over here. Yeah, instantly is a bigger mark, a bigger spot right over here. So first thing I want you to do is focus on creating a small dots like this and be consistent about it. Yeah, make sure they more or less the same size when you keep it. I like to keep my airbrush to steady myself kind of in two hands. If I can, I position the other hand my pinky or some is kind of the same distance from the board if I can do that. If not, I kind of develop that consistency to keep it steady. And as I said, guys, it's important to keep on the air all the time. So I press it down for air and I pull back for paint, and I release the paint coming back, but I keep the air on. So the action is down for air, paint, and the paint is still on, and the air is still on, and it's still on. Only when the trigger is fully released this way towards the nozzle, I release the air. Yeah, that's very important. Keep the air on. So what I want you to do as a first exercise today, keep doing these little dots and make sure they're consistent, that you have no blowouts. Yeah, so what I need you to do, keep the same distance from your piece of paper or canvas, whatever you're painting. Keep that there and pull the trigger back until you have the dot, the size of the dot. It doesn't really matter as long as it's the same consistency, and keep it all the way around. So let's have a look at that right now, if I can complete that. Yeah. There we go, guys. That is the very first exercise I want you to do. I take you off from a tripod. So that was our very first attempt. We've got this dot over here. I pull the trigger back just a little bit until paint starts coming out. That I open the trigger same amount of time, but I open it fully back. A lot of paint came out, and that is the basically what I wanted to practice. Make sure your dots are more or less the same, keep them in line, and do them over and over and over again. You can do them in different directions, horizontally, vertically, whichever way you want. Try to keep the distance more or less the same in between the dots, and try to have the same size. I mean, this one is a little bit bigger than this one, so I need to practice on that, but these are pretty good, I think. So try to keep them the same size. If they're bigger, if you want to start with bigger size, you know, dots, that's absolutely fine, but make sure all the dots are the same size. That is the very first exercise we do today. I think that will be a very good start for you guys. We're going to get some more and more complex designs when we get into it, but this is the very first step. Let's carry on with that. Let's do a couple more. I want you guys to focus on my trigger action. If you can see this, keep in the air and just gently put it back and forth, back and forth. I'm not releasing the air until I'm completely finished with what I'm doing. So let's do a few more this way. Same kind of size. As you can see and probably hear over the hissing, the air is on constantly. I'm only working on the trigger back at the moment, and I think that's what I want you to focus on this very first exercise we're gonna do with our airbrushing. Obviously these are kind of small. As you're first starting, you may want to consider a slightly further distance from a board, and you can have them a little bit bigger so it looks like this. It's going to be slightly easier, I guess. And as you feel more and more confident with that, you can go closer to the board, you know, very close, and that will make them tiny. Well, that is a blowout. That is a blowout. I had some issue. I didn't clean my my nozzle. As you can see probably from here, I'm getting something that's called focus right on the needle over there. There you go. That's called a tip dry. That basically happens when you're shooting quite a lot of air, and the paint stays on the nozzle, on the needle, and it dries out basically, and it blocks the paint flow. Simple way to get rid of it is just what I do with my fingers. Clean it up with my fingers like this, very gently, and that cleans the nozzle. It's ready to spray again. But that's a very common thing. I'm really glad it happened actually. You're gonna experience that a lot, and you're gonna be swearing like crazy because it will mess up your things. So I usually keep the crown from the nozzle. This is the piece. Oh, focus. This is the piece basically that comes on the end of the airbrush that protects your needle. I usually work without it. If you're first starting, I probably recommend you to keep this thing on right on the tip of the airbrush, because very often when I was first starting I was stabbing the needle into my piece, and that basically damages the needle. So at your very first starters, I recommend you to keep this thing on for the first week or two until you become confident, because if you drop it and the nozzle is there, the needle is exposed, you're gonna damage that thing, and the airbrush is pretty much unusable. You need to replace the needle from it. But yeah, this thing, it was a blowout. The paint wasn't coming out as smoothly as I wanted to, so I pulled trigger a little bit more, and this is what happened. And to prevent this, you basically need to keep an eye on that needle, give it a quick clean, and now it's ready to action again. As you can see, I can produce some very fine dots indeed. Once again, from a different angle, probably start large, you know, like this. Make sure they're more the same consistency. I was going over here, I got a blowout, I cleaned the blowout out. I went very close, and you can produce very fine dots. You can probably go even finer than this later on. But yeah, try to stay consistent, do these dots, practice them, take all like A4 or even A3 sheet of paper and completely cover it with these dots. Practice this, you know. It's better to practice half an hour every day than 5 hours one day, you know, in a week. It's going to be more consistent. You develop that muscle memory, you develop that paint consistency feeling, you develop all the sensors you need to become a good airbrush artist. And on the next episode, we're going to focus plainly on the canvas, mostly on airbrushing, not only dots but lines and dagger strokes and some other bits and bobs. But at that point you already know how to set up your airbrush, mix up that paint, you're ready with that, you got your canvas ready, your muscle memory is working, and we can focus on doing some proper fucking airbrushing next time. So keep this piece, put it somewhere safe. As you can see, mine wasn't a big fucking piece of wood, so it's been there for the last 3 or 4 years or maybe more. Keep this very piece, you know, put it somewhere safe. You're going to come back to it in a few months time, and you see how much you improved. That is a very good indication of the very first piece you started. Right, I don't need to keep it because I got my piece of wood over there. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. You got any comments or any specific questions about the subject, drop me a comment below. You got any criticisms as well, drop me a comment below. I'm very happy to hear from you. And until next time, thank you very much once again. Have a day, rock hard, and I'll see you very soon.